Tonight is really an appeal to my colleagues. It's a cry for survival and justice for unborn baby girls and boys. Unborn children need the President of the United States. It needs all of us. They need all of us to be their friend and advocate, not powerful adversaries. In his inaugural speech, President Biden said, and I quote, "The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer." He spoke of a cry for survival from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate, close quote. We believe the dream of justice for all cannot be achieved if an entire segment of society is legally ignored and legally discriminated against because of where they live in their mother's wombs and how small and unbelievably defenseless they really are. We know the President understands this. He gets it, or at least he once did. Years ago, then, Senator Biden wrote to a constituent explaining his support for a law against funding for abortion, and he said it would, quote, protect both the woman and her unborn child, close quote. Senator Biden said, "I have consistently, on no fewer than 50 occasions, voted against federal funding for abortions. Those of us," he went on to say, "who are opposed to abortion should not be compelled to pay for them," close quote. My colleagues on the floor and people, Americans all across the country agree with that. Those of us who are opposed to abortion should not be compelled to pay for them. According to public opinion polls, most Americans, 60%, according to the most recent Marriage poll, agree that taxpayers should not be compelled to fund abortion. Lives have been saved by the Hyde Amendment. More than 20 peer-reviewed studies show that more than 2 million people are alive today in the United States because of the Hyde Amendment, with almost 60,000 children spared death by abortion each and every year. Over 2 million people who would have been aborted instead survived because public funds were unavailable to effectuate their violent demise, and their mothers instead benefited from maternal and prenatal health care and support. As we all know, the science of human development has not changed, and thanks to ultrasound, unborn babies are now more visible than ever. As we all know, my wife and I are grandparents. With each new child that our children give birth to, our daughters and daughters-in-law, the first pictures we see, the first pictures we put on the refrigerator are ultrasound pictures. The first movies we see, the videos, are of that ultrasound, of that child sucking his or her thumb, doing somersaults, having great activity that will be great activity when they're born as well. You know, it was Abby Johnson who quit as a Planned Parenthood director in Texas when she was told she had to assist in an ultrasound-guided abortion. And when she saw that child in real time, literally ripped and shredded and then sucked out of the womb by the suction machine, she walked out of that abortion clinic and has never gone back, and is now a very powerful and articulate spokeswoman for the Right to Life cause. Her book, Unplanned, I recommend it. It is a book that changes hearts. She was on the other side for years, so much so she was the director of a Planned Parenthood clinic. And yet when she saw the deed itself, the dismemberment of that child, she walked out and walked out forever. The same goes for guys, abortionists like Bernard Nathanson, who said, once you see that ultrasound, and he was one of the founders of NARAL, a very large abortion rights organization, he said, "I've come to the agonizing conclusion that I presided over 60,000 deaths." And he too became a pro-lifer. and ultrasound and prenatal surgery, where the babies were treated as patients, not as a being to be extinguished or exterminated, changed his mind. Growing numbers of Americans are shocked, Madam Speaker, that the methods of abortion include dismemberment. They include the literal decapitation of this helpless child. And of course, drugs like RU-46 starve the baby to death before he or she is then forcibly expelled from the womb. The multi-billion-dollar abortion industry is very clever, and they cleverly market the sovereignty of choice while going to extraordinary lengths to ignore, trivialize, and cover up the battered baby victim. Abortion violence, Madam Speaker, must be replaced with compassion and empathy for women and for defenseless unborn babies. We must love them both. Birth is an event that happens to all of us. It's not the beginning of life. That child is just as vibrant before birth as after, just too big to continue inside the womb. Sadly, more than 62 million babies have been killed by abortion in the United States since Roe versus Wade, a loss of children's lives that equates with the entire population of Italy. I truly believe that someday future generations of Americans will look back on us like we look back on people who did other things in previous centuries and years back. They'll look back on us and wonder how and why a society that prided itself on human rights could have effectuated and enabled the loss of so many defenseless babies. 62 million and counting. Madam Speaker, last week, President Biden overturned the Protecting Life and Global Health Assistance, the Mexico City policy. His executive order forces U.S. taxpayers to fund organizations that promote, lobby, or perform abortions on demand in foreign countries. Americans overwhelmingly oppose using U.S. foreign aid to subsidize abortion. The Marist poll last week, just last week, found that more than 3 in 4 Americans, 77%, oppose using tax dollars to support abortions in other countries. 77%. Let's use those tax dollars to combat AIDS, to help people with malaria. And I am the author of the reauthorization of the PEPFAR program, the AIDS program, that is now in effect. It was originally sponsored by our good friend and colleague, Henry Hyde, and George W. Bush was one of his greatest achievements. That's where our foreign policy dollars and foreign aid dollars need to be spent, on nurturing. There's nothing benign about dismembering an unborn child or giving poisons that effectuate their death. Among other pro-abortion executive orders, on January 29th, the President announced steps to resume funding to the UN Population Fund, even though that agency has supported China's forced abortion policy for decades. Madam Chair, I've chaired hearings, 66 of them, on combating human rights in China over these many years. I've been here 41 years. And I can tell you that China treats its unborn and its women in the most horrific of ways. In the 1 child per couple, now 2 child per couple, where coercion is used to enforce it, has led to massive, massive losses of life and broken women. And the UN Population Fund has been right there, cheerleading, supporting, aiding and abetting these crimes against women and children. Finally, Madam Speaker, by reason of their age, dependency, immaturity, inconvenience, or unwantedness, unborn children have been denied justice. And the President calls, we all want justice. And they have been rendered legally persona non grata. Yet their cries for survival, using the President's words, can't be any more desperate than they are. These children need the President of the United States to be their friend and advocate, not another powerful adversary. They need us to be their friend and advocate and not powerful adversaries. I'd like to now yield.
Madam Speaker, I rise this evening with a heavy heart. Like many Americans, I'm saddened by the loss of millions of innocent, precious lives over the last 48 years since Roe v. Wade. I know that there are millions of pro-life Americans rising up to protect the unborn. Because of this, I'm encouraged. I have hope. Over the last 4 years, we saw remarkable pro-life wins all across America. Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Ohio. These states rose up to protect the most vulnerable among us. From both sides of the aisle, they passed heartbeat bills because they know life, every human life, matters. Madam Speaker, when Roe v. Wade was passed, we didn't have 3D ultrasounds readily available. We didn't have readily accessible sonograms or the ability to provide life-saving care to what we call miracle babies, children who are prematurely born as early as 21 weeks. I have held a child in my arms, in my hands, who was born at 23 weeks, 1 pound, 8 ounces. She is a miracle baby. America didn't know that preborn children could feel pain as early as 21 weeks or see videos of babies in the womb clapping as their mother sings to them. Sadly, not all states have seen the light. Back home in Colorado, we're one of only 7 states that allows full-term abortion in America. We've got to do better than this. The CDC states that in 2017, 647,000 Americans died from heart disease, making it the leading cause of death in America. That's not true. The leading cause of death in 2017 in the United States of America was abortion, killing 862,000 precious babies. This is not a tragedy, it's an atrocity. Madam Speaker, I am the mother of 4 children, 4 wonderful boys who I am raising to be men. I am raising my boys to love America, to love people, and to always do their best. I've been in the doctor's office and I've seen my baby boys tossing and turning in my womb. They're my children. They're made in God's image, in His likeness, and they have a God-given purpose and a plan by their Creator who knows them intimately and deeply, loves them, has a plan, a future, and a desired outcome for their lives. And it's my job to raise them according to God's bent. Before they had taken their first breath, God knew them, and I was blessed to carry them. Madam Speaker, I have seen women make the choice. I have a waitress in my restaurant who chose life. She was in a very questionable situation. Her life wasn't what everyone thought it should be. She ended up with child, and she had a choice. She had a choice to not go forward and be a mom, but she chose life. And now she is one of the greatest mothers that I know. Her name is Jasmine Higgs, and her baby boy is Darius, and he is alive today because, glory to God, she chose his life. She said that his life is worth any of the consequences that may come against me. Madam Speaker, I encourage today with this rise, I encourage my colleagues to be hopeful because a culture that celebrates life is on the rise in America. And I'm committed to working with pro-life patriots all across the country until we end the horror of abortion. And with that, I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you for that very passionate defense of life and that story you told. It's a beautiful story.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker, good evening. I rise today as a voice for the voiceless. Since Roe versus Wade was enacted by the Supreme Court decision 48 years ago, 62 million abortions have been performed. 62 million. This is a tragedy. This is definitely something that's devastating to think about. We must stand up for the unborn, those who cannot stand up for themselves, and I always will, and I'm doing that here tonight. As a mom of 2 boys, this issue is close to my heart. While reflecting on the lives lost is difficult to do, I'm inspired here tonight. I'm inspired by the growing pro-life community and movement in our country. I am hopeful that the next generation will fight for life, and I am proud to help lead this fight in Congress, standing with you. I would like to thank my friend, the gentleman from New Jersey, for his leadership on this very important issue, and I'm honored to add my voice to his and many others in the defense of life here tonight. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
Thank you, my good friend, Representative Chris. We really appreciate you, Representative Smith. Madam Speaker, I rise today in solemn memory of the 62 million innocent lives who have been aborted since the tragic ruling on Roe versus Wade. Tellingly, earlier this week, as my wife of 48 years and I welcomed our 17th grandchild into the world, I was reminded of just how precious life really is. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has already shown a blatant disregard for the unborn of our nation. The president has promoted abortion at home and abroad by reversing the Mexico City policy and by taking the first steps in rescinding the Protect Life rule, known as HIDE. And although the fight for life will be an uphill battle under this particular administration, we will never give up. Life is just too important. In our Declaration of Independence, it is written that we have the right to life. That's the first of the unalienable rights that we are granted, the right to life. And although the fight for life will be tough this administration, we will resolve ourselves to continue this battle. At a time when Americans are so deeply divided in our nation, I pray to our good Lord above that we unite in the belief that life is precious and it should be defended at all costs. May we be the generation that will see Roe v. Wade overturned. Thank you. I yield.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the right to life. As a mother, a grandmother of 2 precious grandsons, and the other mother to many students and young people that I've mentored over the years, I'm truly committed to saving the lives of the unborn. As a pharmacist, I've helped many women through the years with infertility issues and helped them achieve successful pregnancies. These women were desperate to having to hold those precious children that many women want to abort. That's why I'll continue to advocate on behalf of the right to life. I believe it is a moral and a God-given responsibility that we protect these treasured trusts from heaven. We always must remember to protect the most vulnerable among us and give a voice to those voiceless babies, those precious children that somebody would want and somebody would nurture and somebody would love. I yield back.
Madam Speaker, since the Supreme Court wrongly decided Roe v. Wade 48 years ago, we have lost 62 million lives to abortion. Any loss of life to abortion is not only heartbreakingly preventable, it is completely unacceptable in our modern society. This pin I always wear on my collar, these 2 little feet, represent the exact size and shape 10 weeks after conception. Every day as I put this pin on my collar, I reflect on the millions of lives cut short and the innovations, ideas, and improvements lost to our world. If anything else was extinguishing life on the same scale as abortion, every American would be up in arms, fighting to right that wrong. Why is the sanctity of life any different? As members of Congress, if we're not willing to fight for life, what are we willing to fight for? The Lord has blessed me with 2 children and now 3 grandchildren. Every individual can attest to the indescribable feeling of joy meeting a newborn for the first time and holding that child. Our Creator has a plan for every single one of us, and I will work tirelessly to ensure every life has the chance to realize its full potential. Thank you, and I.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the lives of millions of innocent babies who's lost their chance of life because of Roe versus Wade. Life is precious. Life is a gift from God, and every human is made in God's image. Every person, born or preborn, has inherent dignity and has the right to life. We have a fundamental duty to fight for the vulnerable and ensure that life is protected. Recognizing the right to life is a worthy cause. It is not radical, and it should be bipartisan. I'm proud to be an advocate for the unborn. I firmly believe in our responsibility as a society to defend the life. I will continue to push for pro-life legislation in Congress, including eliminating the use of taxpayers' funding in any way to perform abortions. I urge my colleagues to join me in fighting for life to protect the most vulnerable among us. Together we can build a culture that respects God's gift. That gift is life. Thank you, Madam.
Madam Speaker, every precious life is made in the image of our Creator. And as image bearers, each person is deserving of fundamental rights, including the right to life. As a doctor, I took an oath to protect all human life. That unequivocal truth was the foundation for my medical career, and it has continued through my work here in the United States Congress. From forcing American taxpayers to pay for abortions against their conscience to rolling back our recent pro-life achievements, President Biden has cemented his anti-life agenda in the first few days of his administration. To paraphrase President George Washington, it is deeds, not words, that define a leader. Right now, pro-life Americans are facing a daunting path ahead. But we are not without hope. Together, with the help of our Creator, we will persevere in our pursuit to defend the most vulnerable among us. Our enduring commitment to life will always prevail. Thank you, and I yield.
Well, I appreciate the gentleman for yielding, and Speaker, first I want to thank the gentleman for his decades of support for life and the unborn in this country, and for everything he's done. So thank you very much. Since 1973, more than 62 million innocent unborn babies' lives have been taken by abortion in this country. Tragically, abortion continues to put women in danger, takes the life of an innocent child, and fails to recognize the dignity of all lives, regardless of how small. In 2017 alone, there were roughly 860,000 abortions in the United States. That number is far greater than the population of the district I represent, Ohio's 5th Congressional District. While the overall abortion rate is decreasing, the rate of using chemical abortion is going up, accounting for roughly 39% of procedures that year. I'm proud that my legislation, the Save Moms and Babies Act, would recognize chemical abortions for what it is, dangerous. Thankfully, there is still reason for hope. 3/4 of Americans, including a majority of who identify as pro-choice, want significant restrictions on abortion. This is most certainly thanks to the growing pro-life movement advocating for the protection of the unborn children who deserve the dignity of life. Without the right to life, we truly have no other right. And I thank the gentleman for yielding and again for all of your work. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you very much. I thank my good friend for his leadership and for his bill, which will save lives.
And I appreciate you hosting this this opportunity to lift up the sanctity of life, I think there would be no debate that every life is precious and worthy of dignity and respect. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." I repeat that. That is from the Holy Scriptures. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. The right to life should not be a political debate. We should uphold the value and dignity of life for even those who are defenseless and not with us yet. It made abortion available throughout pregnancy for nearly any reason. Since that tragic ruling, over 62 million innocent babies have been aborted. In the year following Roe versus Wade, 1 in every 3 abortions in the U.S. were funded via taxpayer funds. You know, again from the Scriptures, Daniel, one of the great prophets, would not have paid taxes in this country and probably would have gone to jail on that basis. Congress made changes so that taxpayer-funded abortions was prohibited in spending bills, but the Democrats are now placing the long bipartisan Hyde Amendment on the chopping block while President Biden rescinds important pro-life protections like the Mexico City policy, which allows taxpayer dollars to go toward promoting abortion abroad. We're not only doing it here, we're doing this to the rest of the world. As a father of 4 and grandfather of 14, I feel very passionately about protecting unborn babies. Any and all measures that take steps to ensure the life of an unborn child will have my complete support, and I will adamantly oppose any that promote or defend such an immoral practice. Thank you, and I...
Thank you. I appreciate my friend from New Jersey for yielding and actually for hosting this special hour. You know, as Americans, we realize that our government was formed to protect our God-given rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, we recently marked the tragic anniversary of the Roe versus Wade decision, an anniversary that reminds us that nearly 62 million babies who never got a chance to see the world. This anniversary is also a call to action. As elected officials, we must stand for the rights of the unborn and be a voice for the voiceless. Instead of working to protect innocent life, President Joe Biden has neglected this duty by signing executive orders that are neither pro-life nor pro-taxpayer. He's reversed the Mexico City policy, forcing U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund abortions in foreign countries, a policy that's opposed by 77% of Americans, Democrats and Republicans. And he signaled that he'll rescind the Title X Protect Life rule, which restricts funding organizations that consider abortion routine family planning. I'm proud to stand with Americans who believe in the sanctity of life, and I'm proud to lead this movement in the Congress with our Protecting Individuals with Down Syndrome Act to safeguard babies with prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. Thankfully, more pro-life leaders, activists, and legislators are rising up to defend the unborn across our country. In Kansas, over the last couple of weeks, our state legislature has passed a resolution that puts a Kansas constitutional amendment on the ballot next year to say with certainty that Kansas values both the life of the mothers and the babies. There's so much more work to be done, and I look forward to representing the many pro-life Kansans in Congress. I yield back to balance.
And the pro-life movement, and such time as you may consume.
Thank you, gentlemen. It is an honor to work with you and to stand with you and so many other colleagues for life, for the unborn. And today, I do rise today to remember 62.5 million children who have lost their lives at the hands of abortionists. It has been 48 years since the passage of Roe versus Wade, and our children continue to suffer and die by the millions. It is unfathomable. We know many of these children perished in the most horrendous and brutal of ways. The pain must have been excruciating, yet we are still failing to hear their cries. The single most effective life-saving protection to stopping the spread of this scourge is the Hyde Amendment. Over 2.4 million children are alive today because of Hyde protections, which prevents taxpayer dollars from going to pay directly for abortions. We know Hyde can't save every life, but it can, and it has saved many. And yet this limitation on federal funds is the #1 target for many of my colleagues. Eliminating Hyde protection will cause more child deaths, not less. But I also rise today to remember women like Keisha Marie Atkins and Jamie Morales, who died as a result of the abortion procedure. I also remember the women who mourn the loss of their babies, who suffer physical, emotional, and spiritual trauma from their abortions. I remember abortion-seeking women today who are offered hopelessness and death in unsanitized, dirty, and subpar clinics when they should be offered hope, prenatal care, and life for the baby inside. Today is a day of remembrance, so let us not forget the women and children who have suffered and perished from abortion. Let us hear their cry and silence them no more. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back, gentlemen.